A shocking wave of chaos has just erupted across Belarus. Thousands are flooding the borders, desperate to escape what's being described as the collapse of Lukashenko's government. Reports are coming in that over 500,000 citizens have fled toward Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia in just 48 hours. Belarus, once seen as Putin's most loyal ally, is now falling apart, and Alexander Lukashenko, the man who ruled with an iron fist for nearly 3 decades, is reportedly trapped inside his presidential compound, surrounded by uncertainty, anger, and betrayal. What began as scattered protests has exploded into a nationwide uprising. Soldiers are refusing orders, police units are abandoning their posts, and Russian troops stationed inside Belarus are now being accused of taking control of key installations as Lukashenko's authority disintegrates before the world's eyes. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Please subscribe and like my videos. This is not just another protest, this is an implosion of a regime that has stood unchallenged since the Soviet era. Overnight, the streets of Minsk, Brest, and Hrodny turned into zones of defiance. Crowds gathered, chanting freedom for Belarus, while waving white flag symbols long banned by Lukashenko's government. State media tried to downplay it, calling it a Western-backed provocation. But the footage pouring out tells another story: armored vehicles burning, military checkpoints abandoned, and soldiers joining civilians in open defiance. For the first time in decades, Lukashenko's grip on power is visibly slipping, and the scenes look eerily similar to what the world witnessed in Ukraine back in 2014, except this time, it's happening on Putin's doorstep. Sources from within the Belarusian Defense Ministry say that an entire mechanized brigade stationed near the Polish border refused to follow orders to disperse protesters. Instead, they declared their loyalty to the people, not the government. The footage circulating online shows Belarusian soldiers removing their national insignias, waving to cheering crowds, and calling on others to join the rebellion. Within hours, the protests evolved into a full-blown nationwide revolt. Cities that once feared even whispering against the regime are now chanting for Lukashenko's resignation. The sound of freedom has returned, but it comes with chaos, fire, and uncertainty. Lukashenko himself has reportedly not been seen publicly for over 24 hours. His press office released a short statement claiming he's in full control, but no live appearances have been made. Rumors swirl that he's either barricaded inside the Drozhdy presidential compound in Minsk, or has already fled toward the Russian border. Putin, however, is in a difficult position. For years, Lukashenko has been Moscow's closest ally, a loyal partner who allowed Russian troops, missiles, and even nuclear weapons to be stationed inside Belarusian territory. But now that his regime is collapsing, the question is, will Putin save him or sacrifice him? Military convoys from Russia were spotted moving toward the Belarusian border late last night. Satellite images show armored columns crossing into Homel region under the guise of stabilization assistance. Kremlin spokespersons claim it's part of a joint peacekeeping operation, but Western intelligence calls it what it truly looks like: an invasion masked as help. This could be Putin's desperate attempt to secure Belarus before it falls into Western hands, a repeat of what he tried in Ukraine, but this time the people of Belarus are not staying silent. Analysts believe this collapse has been building for months. Ever since the war in Ukraine dragged on, Belarus was forced to host Russian operations, despite widespread internal opposition. Sanctions crippled the economy, inflation skyrocketed, and even state employees started to turn against the government. Factories halted production, wages stopped coming, and families could barely afford basic food supplies. For many, it wasn't politics anymore, it was survival. And when soldiers saw their own families struggling while the government continued to prop up Moscow's war machine, loyalty began to crack. Then came the final trigger, an alleged secret order that Lukashenko signed, allowing Russian troops full control over several Belarusian air bases. That decision, insiders say, enraged senior Belarusian generals who feared the country would lose its sovereignty completely. A series of confrontations reportedly took place behind closed doors. One general refused the order, calling it a betrayal of the nation. Days later, his body was found under mysterious circumstances, officially ruled a suicide. That incident ignited fury inside the armed forces. Soldiers began leaking documents, footage, and audio recordings, exposing the regime's desperation and Russia's manipulation. The public reaction was explosive within hours. Thousands took to the streets. By the next morning, the rebellion had begun. Western intelligence agencies and European governments are now closely monitoring the situation. Poland has declared a state of emergency along its eastern border, while Lithuania has opened humanitarian corridors for Belarusian refugees. The European Union issued a statement saying, "The people of Belarus have the right to self-determination." While the Kremlin warned of foreign interference, but in truth both sides know this uprising could redraw the map of Eastern Europe. If Belarus falls out of Russia's orbit, Putin loses his last major ally and a critical buffer zone between NATO and Moscow. For the West, it's a once-in-a-generation opportunity for Putin. It's an existential threat. Inside Belarus, the chaos is spreading. State television has gone dark in several regions after employees reportedly walked out, refusing to broadcast propaganda. Opposition leaders in exile are calling this the final stand. Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya, the exiled opposition figure, has released a statement urging soldiers to defend the people, not the dictator. Her words are resonating deeply. Entire police units in cities like Hrodna have surrendered, handing over their weapons to civilians. Government buildings are being occupied by local resistance groups. The red and green state flag is being torn down, replaced with the banned white, red-white banner of independence. The imagery feels revolutionary, like the collapse of a regime happening in real time. Meanwhile, on social media, Belarusian citizens are live streaming their struggles and victories. One viral video shows a young woman standing in front of a tank, holding a flag as soldiers step out and join her. Another shows thousands of people crossing the border into Poland on foot, carrying whatever they can as explosions echo behind them. Reports claim that over 500,000 have already fled the country, one of the largest migrations in modern European history. Poland and Lithuania are struggling to provide shelter, but the refugees keep coming, saying they can no longer live under a collapsing state. The economic situation has completely broken down. Banks have frozen withdrawals, supermarkets are empty, and fuel stations are running out of supplies. In Minsk, residents report looting, fires, and a total absence of police presence. Government officials are allegedly fleeing the capital, some reportedly crossing into Russia. The entire Belarusian internet infrastructure is flickering on and off, suggesting that authorities are trying to block communications, but it's too late. The information is already out. The world knows Belarus is collapsing. Inside the Kremlin, Putin faces one of the toughest decisions of his career. If he sends full military reinforcements, Russia risks another massive front while already bogged down in Ukraine. If he holds back, he loses his last loyal satellite state. Analysts believe the Kremlin might try to install a transitional pro-Russian government in Minsk, similar to what it attempted in parts of Ukraine. But with the Belarusian army now fracturing, even that plan seems impossible. The people have tasted freedom, and they're not ready to give it up again. Western nations, meanwhile, are preparing for the geopolitical fallout. NATO intelligence is on high alert, with surveillance drones and reconnaissance planes constantly monitoring the situation. Diplomats are holding emergency meetings in Brussels and Washington to discuss the future of Belarus. Could this be the end of the Lukashenko era, and possibly the moment that triggers a wider shift in Eastern Europe's power balance? In Moscow, state media is portraying the events as a Western coup attempt, accusing NATO of fueling the unrest. But the reality on the ground doesn't match that narrative. There are no NATO soldiers, no Western agents, just ordinary Belarusians who have had enough. The narrative of foreign interference is collapsing just as fast as Lukashenko's authority. Even Russian social media platforms are flooded with comments from citizens expressing sympathy for the Belarusian people and criticizing the Kremlin's silence. The situation remains fluid, changing by the hour. In some regions, local councils have declared independence from Minsk, forming temporary administrations and calling for international recognition, European leaders are being cautious, avoiding direct involvement but quietly supporting the growing democratic movement. Humanitarian aid is flowing through Poland and Lithuania, providing food, medicine, and shelter to those fleeing. The United Nations has already held an emergency session to address what it calls a rapidly deteriorating crisis. For Lukashenko, the walls are closing in. Reports claim that even members of his inner circle are negotiating safe passage deals with foreign embassies. The once feared security chief, long considered one of his most loyal enforcers, has disappeared. Insiders whisper that Lukashenko has lost control not only of the streets but of his own generals. In one intercepted radio transmission allegedly between Russian officers, a voice can be heard saying, "The Belarusian president is no longer a factor, we control the situation now." If true, it means Belarus is already under de facto Russian occupation, even as Putin denies it. As night falls over Minsk, the sound of gunfire echoes in the distance. Protesters light candles in public squares, singing the national anthem. For them, this is more than politics, it's a fight for the soul of their nation. Decades of fear, oppression, and silence are breaking apart in one of the most dramatic uprisings Europe has seen in years. The world is watching, unsure whether Belarus will rise as a free nation or fall deeper into Russian control. But one thing is clear, the age of Lukashenko's dictatorship is ending. His empire of fear is collapsing, and history is being written by the brave men and women who dared to stand up. Whether Belarus emerges as a democracy or becomes a battlefield in Putin's struggle to hold onto power, this moment will shape Europe's future for decades to come. The people of Belarus are shouting one message that cannot be silenced anymore: we are free and we will never go back.